Hey, good day, everyone. It's Patrick Lovell, truth bombing and riffing in response to the world that we live in to try to guide a tidal wave populist crusade to purge corruption. And yesterday, the big news, of course, was the town hall on CNN. It was the Trump town hall. It was the Khan town hall. It was on the Khan News Network. And I think it's really fun to watch all of the reactions on Twitter specifically that are saying what I've been trying to say to many of you and interacting with some of you over the course of a long time. And the nature of mainstream media is an absolute train wreck. It's a shit show. It's a disaster zone. It has zero credibility. And of course, I'm not talking just about CNN, even though there's a special place in hell for CNN in context to their fomenting, if you will, because their former president, Jeff Zucker, who, like Les Moonves from CBS, famously quipped, Trump was good for ratings. So back in 2016, CNN whored itself out to the ratings hook, Donald Trump, and played a big role of the disaster that was to come. But the difference between now and then is I think we know Trump's guilty of over lying 5,000 times to the American people while in office. He was impeached, but it was a political juggernaut that didn't lead to his departure. But of course, now all of the entities and the different vectors of law enforcement are really raining down on Trump, not to mention the civil settlement 2 days ago with Jean Carroll. And, it's just CNN is deplorable. And, this on the heels of last week, 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago? I mean, things move so fast, but the Dominion lawsuit and the settlement with Fox, News Corp and Rupert Murdoch for $787 million to admit that they're a platform of propaganda for obviously far right extremism, and I dare say, some degree of Nazism. I mean, that's just like the furthest down the track, but just angry white people who want absolute control, and so they just created a business model to give the people what they want while lying, which of course gave us Tucker Carlson and all of the drama with Tucker Carlson and all of the online, bootlickers that are far left are like, yeah, but Tucker was against the pharmaceutical state and he was against war in Ukraine, so we're going to get on his team because he's trying to tell the truth. But meanwhile, Tucker is fomenting a white supremacist revolution and at the same time lying to people left and right. Although I've said this publicly before, I've enjoyed some of his work on private equity, and I've definitely gotten a good tickle, if you will, from his introspection on UFOs. But that's where I draw the line. Everything else is literally dangerous. And now this guy is taking it to Twitter with his buddy Twitter, and Twitter is incredibly out of control, maddening insanity. And I'm on there because people talk about political issues, so it's appropriate for me to be there to battle through everything because of what I am attempting to do to connect with millions of you to create a tidal wave populist crusade to purge corruption. But in the banality, and I've used that term and overtermed and misused, but in the context of mainstream media, yeah, like CNN and Fox are the only ones guilty. No, MSNBC has been cherry picking stories through the great Rachel Maddow, who is very sharp, has incredible resources, can tell a great story, can yarn a great tale, but she has avoided what it is that I'm trying to get through to the millions that need to hear it, because she's basically the communications director for the Democratic Party, which is getting its funding from the Wall Street meritocracy, which has blown up the freaking world. And she doesn't go anywhere near it. She gives you all of these details of all of the different indictments and investigations and everything that Trump has been guilty in his buffoonery for, the entire, the last 7 years. And she's been very gifted at revealing what she's capable of while ignoring the big story. And there's no credibility. And the rest of MSNBC, if I was just to characterize it, it's kind of like, okay, well, if everybody's going to try to find their audience in mainstream media, of course, the producers are like, okay, well, where do we fit? What do we do? What is our brand? How do we maintain our audience share? Because that's how they get their revenue. And on the platform of MSNBC, it's like anybody who's not MAGA. And react to that. And so it's an identity political warfare, which means all of this stuff is a cultural warfare, and nobody goes anywhere near the actual power of this country that has complete control, which is the financial hijacking and engineering and racketeering of a criminal conspiracy the likes the world has never seen. And probably at the top of the list, and unfortunately, because I've been a subscriber for over a decade and a big fan and a loyal person to journalism, and the New York Times being all the news that's fit to print for my entire life. And I know that they have failed us probably as much, if not more so, than anyone. They're a little bit more difficult to read between the lines and understand what they've done. And I have a ton of access to people that have worked there, that have been in my productions and so forth, that I've got the skinny. And I can tell you right now that as bad as Jeff Zucker was at CNN and Rupert Murdoch, of course, even though he's a special kind of insanely horrific human being at News Corp. But, the New York Times, through the sort of deception racket that Andrew Ross Sorkin has pulled off at DealBook to hide everything that I'm telling you, is extraordinarily antithetical to journalism and a complete betrayal to the United States. And it kills me because a guy like Donald Trump, who I despise, there's nothing about Donald Trump that should ever merit anything that he's ever done that he shouldn't have been in prison for literally decades ago. But Don the Con, the Teflon Don, has walked through the raindrops because he's this expression of everything that is that I'm revealing to you that the system never took him down for. And because he started off on third base with Daddy Warbucks, Fred Trump money, and then all of his ideology as it related to Make America Great Again, and of course the Ku Klux Klan and all of the things that they were guilty of in terms of predatory lending and everything they got nailed for back in Queens in the 70s. This has been a long process. Donald Trump is just a buffoon and a liar and a guy that plays everybody for what they want. And he said the only true thing that he ever said was fake media, because he's played it for the last 4 decades. And yeah, the New York Times, because of what they don't tell us, and what I'm telling you, is fake media. Is it that simple? It's not that simple, but I'll tell you, God, the mainstream media, just think about it. They're all owned by billionaires or multinationals, and all the newspapers are owned by hedge funds, and they're all into finance, and finance runs the show, and they pulled off the ultimate coup d'etat in 2009, and that's what I'm telling you. And the only one who really gets it right on the financial side of things is Pam Martins of Wall Street on Parade, and she just did an article this morning that just reiterates what she's been talking about for pretty much the last 13 years, but with more stark contrast and details about the top 4 too big to fail institutions have 40% of the assets in the United States, and it's so centralized, and they've got, I think, over, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a large majority of the notional value of derivatives. And a lot of this stuff's off the books, and we're just about to experience another catastrophic rug pull of the financial system because we never changed anything after 2008. The Dodd-Frank rule obviously came up short, as we've seen on display in all of these bank runs, but the ultimate moment that we're upon is this commercial real estate bubble that's going to blow, and it's going to trigger a whole lot of things, and who knows what's what in the derivatives and everything else that exists out there. And of course, the Fed's going to be right back in the same position they were in 2009, which is what I reveal, which I continue to try to break through your noise barriers and everything that you pay attention to make sure to deliver you this ultimate core tumor of how this whole thing works. Nobody in mainstream media is going to tell you this. They never have. They've covered this up for years, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm truth bombing the con. It's all a con. It's all a lie. It's all a deception racket. And all of the the reactionaries in mainstream media that have built huge audiences because they're charismatic and they're funny and they're fun and sometimes really, really smart. And I'm referring to guys like Russell Brand, but he doesn't have enough time between his talking and reacting and projecting and everything else to actually know how things actually operate. I know I've tried to get him the information, and hopefully one day I will. And when I do, I'm going to make him know what he's missed for the longest time, which I hope he'll really have a significant come to reality moment. But I don't know how easy that would be for a guy like Russell Brand, to be honest with you. But Joe Rogan, the guy's always been asking questions, and he goes after a lot of neat things. And I've been listening to Joe for a long time. I mean, we're all kind of in the same generation, so I understand those dudes and how they think, and I think kind of the same way. But I'm an investigative journalist and a producer that had to go do the deep dive with this amazing monumental revelations that include all the top people from all of our institutions and law enforcement that tell us exactly how the corruption worked. And I got AGs around the country that tell us the same thing. I've got all of the evidence. And then I've got the revelations of what the Federal Reserve did illegally as the lender of last resort, where we pulled, a smoke and mirrors scenario during the Obama administration that backdoored $30 trillion to a bankrupt financial system that got that way through racketeering. And that's why I say we're a corporate fascist state undergirded by a criminal syndicate that uses socialism to backstop the mafiocracy that is now fueling fascism, all of which are unacceptable. And where do we go from here? Who's going to lead the charge? And what I continue to tell you is that Bernie Sanders isn't going to fix the problem. He never has. He's a platitudes guy. He doesn't even understand the details of this whole thing. Even though I love him and he's a smart guy and I always think he's pretty much on the right side of things, he doesn't have the capacity or the will to be able to bring the information to you that I'm bringing to you. Elizabeth Warren, she's next level in terms of details and understanding, but she was a corporate attorney and she knows how to play both sides, and she's a part of the Ivy League, so she just takes it up to the edge and becomes that person that you think is telling you truth but doesn't do anything about it, and she hasn't for years. I mean, they have some sort of investigations on occasion and they reveal a lot of important things, but it never goes next level because it's smoke and mirrors. I'm sorry. It's just a freaking technique, man. Meanwhile, the machine keeps grinding, doing what it's doing, putting us in these precarious scenarios that can destroy the world. And on top of it, literally, what you need to understand is that we're not a capitalist system, right? We're not a democracy. We don't have free markets. We have monopolies, and we have this system that's just completely inbred and guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the United States because of the apparatus of power and the appointments that serve at this in the highest levels. For example, Jerome Powell, who I mentioned to you yesterday, came out of Sullivan and Cromwell, which was the law firm that basically saved Wall Street illegally, and they knew what they did and they admitted it to the FCIC, and I've got the evidence and I have it on my YouTube page. Now, incidentally, I'm a part of an interview that I did with a great guy by the name of Egberto Willies, who's doing a long-form series on many of the revelations that I'm providing you. So look for it on his website, which you can find on YouTube, and I think you can find through any Google search called Politics Done Right. A really great guy. So, I mean, look, guys, what I'm offering you is an opportunity to basically do what we all know. Is we've got to turn the table on this massive racket of deception that is hiding the truth of this system that basically pisses on your head telling you it's rain, and it loots the central bank of the United States, the full faith and credit of the United States, to basically bury you. That has nothing to do with the dynamism of free markets or the integrity of law and all of those things that we think we are. We're not. It's all a fucking facade, man. And I've been on this never-ending journey that's basically the yellow brick road to Oz, and I found it. And I've got all of the information at www.thecon.tv, and that's going to be pulled down unless a miracle happens and millions of people discover it, because that's the fucking full story of what the government of the United States didn't do in the aftermath of the financial crisis. Although I will tell those of you who are paying attention or are smart people, we actually did reveal all in the Federal Crisis Inquiry Commission, but it was a bipartisan, basically show trial that never did the amount of criminal referrals that were necessary given the information they had. So nobody could actually respond to it. But then they ended up having $250 billion in settlements and these deferred prosecution agreements, and then the statement of facts where, they laid out that, there was so much criminal activity, and yet this is going to be a civil settlement for $250 billion, which is a great get out of jail for free card when you consider that they got $30 trillion for cost of doing business. And then at the same time, then we gave them another 13 trillion plus in quantitative easing, which is a whole nother story of just insanity in terms of giving the most amount of money and free money and buying the assets and creating socialism for the richest in this country, which is so anti-American and antithetical. But that's what I continue to tell you. We're not the United States of America. We're just this facade of bullshit. And then behind the scenes, the power that has completely betrayed us all is an aristocracy or techno-feudal scenario or a corporate fascist state or all three, right? And in the end, what I'm doing, because I've got the answers, that took me years and years and years to get this information, and plus millions upon millions of dollars to do it, to get it from all the biggest sources, and ultimately to go public with this information, we had to cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's by getting filtered through three of the top entertainment law firms in the United States, so we weren't held liable for this stuff because we name names at the highest levels of finance. Do you think they've got deep pockets in corporate law firms to be able to take it to us if they wanted to? You bet your ass they could. Have they? No. What they did was they basically buried us, and I have to fight like crazy to get your attention because, of course, what, is CNN going to do it? No, they'd rather get ratings with Don the Con Trump and everything that elucidates, and I think it should destroy CNN. What about Fox? Like I continue to say, they have credibility with the likes of these MAGAs that give them, some sort of like platform in their brain and their frequency and their bandwidth that's like, look, as long as you tell us about how bad the other guy is and how great Trump is and how, special we are because we're white, I guess, and just all manners of just the same old, throughout history, just absolute insanity. And then everybody else failed, including the nation's paper of record. And so I'm trying to thread the needle to get you this information that you can find in Patrick Level Truth Bombs the Con on TikTok, on YouTube, and please like and subscribe and share. And then also, through this movement. And so what I'm reaching out, given all of this interplay and everything that I've done, the Democrats aren't going to do it. They're not going to kill the corruption. And in fact, I think we're very, very close to the next economic complete catastrophic meltdown that I think is going to freaking be possibly worse than 2008. This is not a sustainable system. The United States financial system has completely turned into a criminal racket that basically levered the world with oligarchs and drug cartels and everything else to launder money and real estate in the United States and all of this stuff. That was exposed by the ICIJ in the FinCEN files 2 years ago. And that's part of this too. Okay, so the Supreme Court's corrupt, Congress is corrupt, the executive branch is corrupt, the media is corrupt. We're a sinking disaster. And I represent Main Street and the dynamism of the American dream and we the people. And I need millions of you to join me because it's not about me, it's about us. Get it? You plus me equals we the people. And if you invest $13, and I'll lay it up again, that the billionaires spend billions in multinationals to basically be in a position to corrupt the system to loot trillions. And you're none the wiser. So I'm trying to get this truth together for you so that A, we can take corruption down, and B, we can reset the United States, because there's nothing impossible that we can't overcome. And we will, whether it's me or somebody else, but we will. But I've got the information. And on the other side of this whole purpose is built to create the Clean New Deal. We got to erect a modern day Procure hearing that basically lays all of the stuff up with the information I have, and I want to do it on a barnstorming tour, and I want to wind up in Washington, D.C., underneath the gaze of Abraham Lincoln, where he said, "A nation of war and by the people shall not perish from this earth." That's what drives me, and so does I have a dream. I mean, that's who I am, man. I'm all about liberty and justice for all, the integrity of law, fairness, equality, and dynamism, and I know that you have to have a hybrid system where it's like free market, based on the accountability and credibility of law, and at the same time for people that are below the line that fall through the, through the cracks because of some, mammoth problems that exist from time to time. And there are business cycles, but this is different than the business cycle, that you have to have, safety nets, and you have to have a hybrid social scenario in a lot of different ways. And then ultimately, there's a balance. We're a huge economy. We can do all of these things, but you have to have smart people that have integrity, that are at the helm of all of these things, that where the system works just like a ship. It's complicated. Just like a 747. It's complicated. Just like, any number of satellites in spacecraft that we send into the heavens. I mean, it's complicated. But do we do it every day? Yeah. Can we figure this out? Yeah. Is it rocket science? No, it's racketeering. And the law has to be the law. Otherwise, there's no point. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. So if you invest $13 in honor of the original 13 colonies, that's your buy-in. That's your competition to the billionaires that have completely snuffed you out. Then I'm going to create, if I can get 13 1,200, and we're, let's call it 1,244 at this stage. Maybe we're closer to 1,230 at this stage needed to get to that level on first base. And it has to happen fast. It has to happen now. And the reason it has to happen now is because everybody's kicking into, the stupid 2024 election cycle, and, people are going to be giving millions of dollars to this or that. Former President Trump, I feel sick even calling him President Trump, the former Con-in-Chief, has probably already raised north of $15 million for his presidential campaign. And I saw enough when he announced it at Waco because I knew it was a white supremacist movement, period. And then CNN's like, oh yeah, sure, come on board and we'll try to normalize you, Don the Con, because it's for ratings. Fuck you, CNN, and all the rest. And so $13 goes to us building a podcast because I've got access to some of the best that exists and the brightest minds and all the guys who can tell us how to work our way out of this. And I can give you information that nobody else can give you. Or will. And then once we do that, we continue to grow the circle. And I've got literally thousands of pages of documentation fraud of the largest criminal grift in our courts to expose the largest complicity of judicial corruption in the history of this country, bar none, that we know of. I don't think anything could have been this coordinated, and it's not funny, so I apologize for laughing. Millions of people got their lives destroyed. And as we build forward, I'm going to create this mechanism like I'm Bob Geldof. Sorry to put myself in the comparison to that genius that pulled off that time, and he was flawed too, but I'm talking about Live Aid back in the late 80s with U2 and everybody else, to try to raise awareness of famine in Africa. But, we're going to purge corruption, and we're going to take this barnstorming tour and a multimedia tour to the people all around the United States, and that's going to cost a lot of money. And that's why I want to try to get 13 million people to get in the game, because if we had a war chest of $169 million, A, we could do what I'm suggesting, and B, they can't ignore us. And then we're going to build a new party, based on all of the information that I have that can take down corruption. Because there's two choices that we have, okay? I mean, there's three outcomes that are on the way. We're either going to turn into a fascist state, literally, or we're going to turn into a communist state. I don't see that happening now, but maybe people rise against and then they go in the extreme other direction. Or the bad guys are going to continue to do what they're doing, which is just basically a debt slavery ridden state for the next 100 years. That's unacceptable, considering all the problems we have. I don't think the world can exist based on the fossil fuel paradigm past another 30, 40 years. And who knows what that's all about unless we fix all of these problems. And by the way, they're all interlinked, and we can create this incredible new enlightenment, this incredible dynamic new structure, because you got to have markets. People have got to get jobs. They got to get paid. There's no question about all of those things. And we can talk in detail if you have any questions. Please reach out to me if anybody wants to challenge me. Let's go on YouTube. I'll tell you what I know. You tell me what you know, and we'll see who wins. If you want to be critical, I'm fine with that too. And, if you can get on board as quickly as possible and we move forward and you start sharing and you start interacting and you start understanding, then we can basically pull up this facade of darkness, this cloud of deception and obfuscation that has hidden this betrayal. And I'm not standing for it. And I'm doing everything I can to win you over. And I know there's millions of you out there who think like I do. I know there's millions of you out there who would not allow this to happen if you understood how it happens. And you've never had the opportunity to have it spelled out for you because this whole system is rigged to make sure that you don't know it. So thanks again for listening. Onwards and upwards. Failure is not an option. Rise, roar, revolt. Thanks for listening. All the best.